Okay, so let's raise the big questions. Has Donald Trump put India in a diplomatic spot once again with his remarks? Is there more than meets the eye to what Donald Trump is doing, his so-called theatrics? Should India publicly call out Donald Trump's falsehoods more strongly? Is India walking a dangerous diplomatic tightrope? And the key question, is the choice now between Russian oil and a US free trade or a trade agreement with the US? What is in India's national interest? Joining me now, KC Singh, former Indian ambassador, Ashok Malik, partner at the Asia Group, Alexander Slater, MD Capstone, joins me from Washington. One of the world's leading economists, William Buter, joins me, American-British economist, someone who's been chief economist with Citibank, has worked with leading universities, joins me. Rahul Ahluwalia, founder, director of Foundation for Economic Development, is also with us. I appreciate all of you joining us, and I want to get each of you to respond to that. Let's first get in an Indian perspective. Rahul Ahluwalia, your first reactions to what you've heard Donald Trump do, and I want to pose that question. Is it now Russian oil versus a US free trade agreement? What do you believe is in India's interest?
Thanks, Rajdeep. This whole thing reminds me of this statement, never argue with a fool, they'll drag you down to their level and beat you with experience. And I think in following Donald Trump, we have to be very careful in how we respond. We should not follow his lead in two things. The first is that we should not make public any agreements or disagreements. And for the first half of our handling of this affair, we were being very careful about this. We were doing strategic backroom deals instead of trying to drag this fight out into the public. And I think we should continue that strategy. It was a great strategy. The second thing is we should stop phrasing trade as a win-loss kind of affair. Trade is win-win. If we manage to get a trade deal with the USA, it is a win for the USA. It is a win for India. This is a mistake on Donald Trump's view that he thinks that trade is win-loss, right? He thinks that the US is losing when it is trading with other countries. This is simply not true. So we should not follow that. When it comes to the US versus Russia, my personal opinion is that the US matters a great deal more than Russia. Russia is a power of the past. The US is the largest economy in the world. It's one of the most technologically advanced countries in the world. It's a very complementary economy to ours. It is a fantastic trading partner. I don't think there is any doubt when it comes to choosing between the two. There are transactional minor wins on one side and huge strategic wins on the other. The choice is clear.
Okay, the choice, that's an interesting argument to take forward, William Buter. Do you believe it's as stark as that India should be focusing more on managing its relationship with the US, hopefully working towards a trade agreement, rather than getting caught up in its oil transactions with Russia, and therefore the choice in that sense is Donald Trump pushing India to make that choice? And is that a choice that should be made, choosing the United States and a trade deal with the US over importing relatively cheap oil from the Russians?
I think it is a very easy choice, actually. Yes, Russian oil is cheaper than alternative sources of oil that are available from the Middle East especially, but there's no doubt that India could profitably refine and re-export oil that does not come from Russia. A second point, which I think people don't focus on much, is that Russia may not be able to reliably supply oil in the future if Ukraine gets the long-distance missiles, the Tomahawks, etc., that is asked for, and with which it could disrupt the ability of Russia to be an oil supplier. So these are sort of two practical reasons. More generally, the US and, of course, the EU are much more important trading partners than Russia. Russia, all it provides is oil at a profitable margin, but not enough, I would think, to risk a non-agreement on trade with the US.
Let me get in Alexander Slater, MD Capstone from Washington, D.C. Your views, Alexander, is that a choice that Donald Trump is pushing India to make, and should India hold off in its national interest? According to you, at the moment, our figures show we import about 35% of our oil basket through Russia, but we are diversifying. Is it in India's interest, you believe, to diversify our oil basket?
Thanks for inviting me to join the conversation. It's wonderful to be here with the distinguished panelists and to especially see my friend Ashok Malik. Good to see you, Ashok. Look, it's not for me to tell India what its interests are, but I do think that the facts speak for themselves, and I think some of the panelists who have preceded me have eloquently stated that. Some other facts that are of interest are that, in the last, since the tariffs were imposed, the price of oil has gone down 10%, and the discount that India was paying on Russian crude was about 5%. And so whatever cost India may have had to foot in terms of diversifying away from Russian crude has basically evaporated if you were comparing the situations today to August. So that's sort of the first thing. I think these questions about the reliability of Russian sources is a very good one. You've seen that Ukraine, even without the Tomahawk missiles, has stepped up its attacks on Russian energy infrastructure to great effect in Russia, where energy prices have gone up significantly and they're on the verge of energy rationing for Russians. And so these are things that I think are in India's interest to consider when they think about that side of the ledger. On the other side of the ledger, I think it's actually quite clear that the impact of the tariffs has been very negative for the Indian economy. Goods exports to the United States are down 50%, I think, over the last 4 months, with the new data in from September. And that's while the rupee has depreciated 5% against the dollar over that same period. You would not expect anything like that to happen when effectively Indian goods in the United States are becoming cheaper. You would expect Americans to buy more of them, not less. But you see the impact of the tariffs, and you see the tariffs having a major impact, especially since the 50% came into effect in August, where the goods purchases from India by Americans have gone down 12% in that period. And you see having a very big impact on areas of the Indian economy like textiles, jewelry, and even some electronics, steel and chemicals. And so all of these calculations have to be balanced against one another. And it seems, based on, I think, some of the things the prior panelists have said and the economic data, that this is trending in a negative direction.
Just let me put that before I come to you, Ashok, in some stark terms for our viewers. Cheap oil from Russia or trade deals with America is a dilemma of sorts. The United States remains India's top trading partner. Total bilateral trade touched nearly $132 billion in FY 24-25. India importantly enjoys a surplus here. Of course, tariffs have in a way weakened some of the key sectors like textiles, gems and jewelry. We export more, over $86 billion worth of goods than we import. This is prior to the tariffs coming in. With Russia, it's the opposite story. Despite being only our fourth or fifth largest partner, India now imports over $63 billion worth of Russian goods, mainly discounted oil, exporting less than $5 billion. That's a trade deficit of nearly $59 billion. Just putting that in some kind of context. Therefore, Ashok Malik, do you believe Donald Trump is willy-nilly pushing India to make certain choices? What might have been seen in India's interests a few months ago, there are those who claim it was in the interests of big business who are doing the oil deals, not necessarily the consumers. That is a separate dispute. But do you believe that the time has come for India to relook at the way they've benefited from Russian oil, but now need to benefit from the trade deal with the US? You're on mute, Ashok.
India needs.
Yes,
India needs the trade deal with the US. India also needs reasonably priced energy. There is no binary choice here. India needs both. It's the responsibility of effective diplomacy and imaginative statecraft to make sure both happen. In 2022, when the Ukraine war began, reasonably priced energy entailed an enormous amount of imports from Russia because other sources were not available. For example, Saudi Arabia stopped producing excess oil. It, for its own reasons, whatever reasons, it stopped producing oil. Today, Saudi Arabia is pumping out oil. other sources have become available, the discount at which Russian oil is available has declined. And organically, Indian buyers, public sector buyers, private sector buyers will make market-driven choices, some of which might see some diversification from Russia. The second point, please look at Trump's statement today in response to an answer to a question, in response to a question. His tone was collaborative. It was even dignified. He spoke about a gradual decline, not tomorrow morning, but a gradual decline. He even said, once the war is over, we are doing this to put pressure on Russia. Once the war is over, India can go back to buying Russian oil. This is all very different from the rhetoric coming out of the Trump administration a few weeks ago, which leads me to believe that some background diplomacy is working. And the third point I'd like to raise is Mr. Trump giving himself wiggle room and the political pathway to diluting or removing the 25% sanction tariffs which he imposed on India, which is the key question, and the proof of the pudding lies there.
Interesting that you believe, therefore, you're seeing even in the seeming bombast of Donald Trump, as some have seen in the past, now a toning down of rhetoric. Is that how you see it, KC Singh? That India needs to, in a way, provide perhaps Donald Trump some room to wriggle out of the tariff issue so that a trade deal is cemented next month. Diplomatically, India has been very careful not to challenge Donald Trump beyond a point. The MEA claimed there was no conversation between Prime Minister Modi and President Trump, but beyond that, they haven't really taken on Donald Trump at any time. Even when his advisors spoke of India being a dead economy, we were very quiet. Is that strategy, in your view, working slowly but surely? Even today, when he speaks about Russian oil, is there a toning down, as Ashok Malik seems to suggest?
Look, Rajdeep, I don't think you can deal with issues, oil, etc., in separation. Because you're dealing with Trump as a whole entity. And for him, the whole Russian oil issue is linked to Ukraine. And he feels that the Ukraine, and he has said it, India is keeping the Ukraine war going. Now, the problem is that there are two ways to deal with Trump. One is the way the Europeans have done it, the way the most of the world is doing it. Just stand there, be embarrassed by Trump, but largely don't take him on. You can privately do what you want, and publicly you can adopt whatever policy, but don't confront him. The other one is the Chinese matter. The Chinese had cut a deal with them, and now they've gone back on that deal. And they're back again to rare earths. And Americans are facing a problem there. Probably that's one of the elements that might help India. Now, the problem in dealing with Trump is that he publicly embarrasses you, but then we also make mistakes. When Ambassador Designate Gore was here, never diplomatically, never ever, an ambassador designate is received by a head of government. Now, Prime Minister met him, took a painting from him, signed by Trump. Whatever he discussed with him, Gore would have gone and told Trump. Now, when Trump says, I've been told, it doesn't mean he's been told directly by Prime Minister. Maybe that's what Gore went and told him. So when you start breaking conventions, you think you can please Trump and get across to him, then you'll always have a mix-up. I think with Trump, you have to have a very straightforward way of dealing with him. Russia is a relationship with Russia is more than just oil. You know, we have a defense relationship. Tomorrow you can have instability in the Gulf and the oil supplies can cease. Iran is not part of the Sharm el-Sheikh meeting. So the Israelis are not about to stop. They're still going after Iran. So it's a region from which we are getting oil, which is very unstable and it can get destabilized very rapidly. Therefore, you need a diversity of relationships which are necessary for defense equipment, which are necessary for oil, energy, gas, and so on and so forth. And also it is necessary for your international image, because the whole world is watching, the smaller countries, global south, they're watching who is able to stand up to Trump. Now, it doesn't mean you fight with him, but the Chinese are getting that leadership. The Chinese are the ones who will be seen as the other power which can stand up to the Americans. Now, if we go on getting embarrassed, and then we have to publicly have the spokesman of the MEA sort of wriggle out of it, then this will continue. This will not stop. Look at the importance. Prime Minister didn't go to Sharm el-Sheikh. Why? Because look at the importance given to the Pakistani Prime Minister. And there was a danger that Trump may just call Prime Minister Modi and say, come on, shake hands with the Prime Minister Sharif. So you're dealing, you can keep saying in public.
No,
we are
so he
great
did the right
friends.
thing. No, let's be clear, KC Singh, the Prime Minister, let me intervene then. The Prime Minister did not go to Sharm el Sheikh. On hindsight, it was probably the right thing to do. I mean, you
Absolutely.
don't want to be part of some Trump love fest, surely.
Absolutely. But then keep that message consistent. You don't receive an ambassador designate and take a painting from him. God knows what he goes and tells Trump. And then Trump will just, he has a stream of consciousness.
Okay.
You give him a mic, he'll say whatever occurs to him. Whether it embarrasses you or it doesn't embarrass you, it's happened time and again. And I think you have to choose how to deal with Trump. And if you think that you can appease him, it's not going to work, because that is not the way the Chinese are dealing with him.
Okay, I've got your point. You made
Trade
that China point. I
negotiation.
want to take that to you, Rahul Ahluwalia. The Chinese are using, for example, they're using. Yes, William, you let me get an intervention. William Buter, you wanted to intervene. I heard you. Go ahead.
No, it's just important to recognize that these negotiations are not just about the Russian 25%, they're about the whole 50%. And meaningful trade negotiations will have to continue even after India, if they were to do so, discontinues oil imports from Russia. There would have to be concessions on tariff barriers and on non-tariff barriers. So this is not just Russia we're talking about.
So why is Trump again raising Russia again and again is the question. Is he using Russia as a bargaining chip to push India to the wall? And should India stand up, Rahul, as is being suggested by KC Singh? We shouldn't be seen to be bullied by Trump. Instead, rather than go overboard in any way, we've got to stand up. The Chinese have done so and have done reasonably successful, but the Chinese have rare earths, they have weapons available, they are a much larger economy, so they can stand up to Donald Trump. Can India do so really? Can we really stand up to Trump? Or do we need to really work carefully to negotiate a win-win trade deal?
I mean, first of all, China's success is very qualified. They've just had 100% tariffs announced against them. And by and large, this whole thing was set off by China. So I would not qualify China's strategy as a success by
But they're not
any means.
concerned about it. The Chinese don't seem, as of now, Rahul,
I mean-
just to intervene, the Chinese don't seem as concerned about it. They seem to be willing to look at Donald Trump in the eye.
If they're not, that's a mistake. The Chinese economy is extremely fragile. They've been in situations of overproduction for almost 5 or 6 years now. Their real estate sector is in massive crisis. If I were the Chinese, I would be very worried no matter what brave front I'm trying to put up to the rest of the world. So, I mean, I would not at all say that we should copy China in any way, shape or form at all. But that doesn't mean that we give up self-respect or anything of the sort. We should just not view it in those terms. We should view it, we should not take Trump on his terms. Why are we trying to meet Trump on his terms? Our strategic interest should be of primal importance to us, right? And our strategic interests lie in securing a large market with the USA. Our strategic interests lie in lowering our own trade barriers so that our economy becomes more competitive, so that our economy becomes more efficient and grows. It is in our interest to lower trade barriers. We should always remember that. We should reform our economy in such a way that we don't need trade barriers to hide behind. Our agriculture sector has been crying out for reform for decades. We could use this as a reason to reform our agricultural subsidies. It doesn't mean we stop agricultural subsidies. We should protect our farmers. We should protect the people who need protection. We should not protect particular types of crops. We should not protect particular types of fertilizers. We should not protect particular types of water withdrawal methods. This is just inefficient. It hurts us. It hurts our environment. It hurts our farmers. It hurts our long-term strategic interest. This is an opportunity to do something about it. And we should look at it in those terms, not in the terms of are we winning or losing against Trump. That's a mistake.
Okay. Alexander Slater, Is there a realization, though, where you are in Washington, that Donald Trump is leading the world into a very dangerous path with sort of ultra-nationalism at one end, upending the multilateral trade order that existed, or a global trade order, with his unconventional use of tariffs as a weapon? Is there finally a recognition that eventually America will pay a price at some stage for what Donald Trump is doing? Is there finally that recognition coming in almost 6 months after he first sort of used in April tariffs as a weapon?
It's a difficult question to answer because the U.S. economy itself is in a strange state. Earlier in the year, it looked like it wasn't growing at all, and then the second quarter growth was actually quite impressive. Parts of the U.S. economy are growing extremely well. Many people point to the AI boom as the main driver of growth in the United States, and there's evidence to suggest that is exactly what's happening. Other parts of the U.S. economy appear to be weaker. China's retaliation against the United States in this current trade spat involves not buying any soybeans from the United States. And so there's discussions here about a $10 billion bailout for U.S. soybean farmers. So parts of the U.S. economy are being hurt by these extended trade discussions. But other parts of the U.S. economy feel very good about it. I think certain domestic interests like steel producers, lumber producers, think that aluminum producers think that the tariffs that President Trump has imposed are wonderful because effectively it allows them to charge higher prices for their goods. So it's actually a pretty complex question to answer at this point in time. I do think personally, ultimately, the long-term interest of the United States involves a more open economy and good relationships with its allies around the world, including India. And I'm hopeful that we'll come to a resolution on that soon.
So let me come, Ashok Malik, to where, in a way, circle back to that key issue. Should India now stand up in some way to Donald Trump every time he makes these comments that seemingly embarrass India, give the opposition another talking point? Or should the focus be on quiet backroom negotiations? We've got the Commerce Ministry team even now in Washington as we speak, and get the trade deal done. Whatever else happens with the Russian oil deal, separate that from the trade deal.
To be honest, India has managed this with some dignity and with some effective diplomacy because it's Trump's rhetoric that has changed. Trump is still saying don't buy Russian oil, I agree. But his language today was collaborative, was conciliatory. It said that you can do it gradually in the next few, I presume, weeks. You can go back to Russia after the war is over. He didn't call India a dead economy. He wasn't abusive. Some weeks ago, he and his team had been frankly abusive and have, got people very riled up in India, and justifiably so. Today, he was more collaborative. So obviously, some diplomacy has happened in the background, for which India needs to get credit as well. And quite honestly, I have to disagree with Mr. Casey's saying he's an old friend and a very seasoned diplomat. I think it required the government in India to engage an ambassador designate. These are extraordinary circumstances. Yes, it was a violation of diplomatic conventions to engage Goa, but diplomatic conventions exist to facilitate national interest. National interest doesn't exist to facilitate diplomatic conventions. And it was in the national interest to engage Goa.
That's it. Okay. A final word then, K.C. Singh, do you go along with Ashok Malik that we are seeing, despite what Trump said today about Russian oil, we are seeing a softening of America's stand, and that's good news. And that perhaps our national interest requires us to at times break with diplomatic conventions.
Well, then what was the need for the spokesman of the ministry to contradict it? If you think that things are changing and Trump is only sending positive signals, what was the need to say there was no discussion between the Prime Minister and the President? We are the ones who reacted to that.
Because it is embarrassing. Because it is embarrassing. It is embarrassing for a government that claims to have an independent foreign policy to be told by the US President that we've got an assurance from the Indian Prime Minister we will not buy Russian oil.
I'm answering Mr. Malik's thing that if we are seeing such positive reaction out of US, then what was the need to do it? We are doing it because Trump is unpredictable, because you don't know what happens tomorrow. You don't know what will be the final outcome. See, there are two parts to the trade deal. One is the Russian part, the 25%, and then there is the other 25%. The latest Economist magazine has done an article which says actually most of the tariffs that he's imposed, in reality, if you take the exceptions that he has made, it's working out to much less than 20-25% for each country, even for Canada or for Mexico. So it's a very confusing and very confused state of affairs. And in that, to get a trade deal, you know, one of the gentlemen in your panel was saying that we can reform agriculture in India. You saw the farmers' agitation. It's not an easy thing to just reform agriculture in India. How do you do it? Bulk of the people in India are dependent on agriculture. How do you overnight reform it?
Okay.
It's just not possible to do it. You see the kind of agitation which took place over the farm laws. So it's a very complex thing. I think the government realizes that you cannot expose our agriculture and dairy sector. Sorry, one last thing. Dairy sector is not just reform. We are concerned about genetically modified crops coming in. We are concerned about dairy items coming in where the cows are being fed non-vegetarian food. Now, how will BJP, accept that when you're going around, people are getting lynched for supposed selling beef?
Casey, I want to stop you there.
But India will have to reform its
We can go
agricultural
back to the
sector.
nitty-gritty of the trade deal on another day. Today, the focus has been more on the on the choice that was made. Yes, William, you want to make a final point?
The final point: India really has to reform its agricultural sector. It is far too large for the growth trajectory that India is capable of. It has to shift labor and other resources out of agriculture into manufacturing and services, especially high-tech services. This is a chance to do so. No, don't protect your farmers through tariffs. If lower tariffs endanger their livelihoods, temporarily subsidize their incomes. India has to move into the second quarter of the 21st century. The agricultural sector should not be an obstacle to trade deals with the US.
Okay, we will leave it there. I think we've heard various viewpoints. Clearly, Donald Trump, as I said, keeps upending traditional ways of doing diplomacy, traditional ways of operating in this multipolar world. But I appreciate my guests joining us and giving us from the United States and here in India varied viewpoints. Thank you all very much.